You're watching TVP World. I'm Alex Cadier here in our Brussels studio to talk about European security, to talk about the ongoing geopolitical rifts in Europe, across the Atlantic, and the fraying, perhaps, of that transatlantic relationship. I want to get straight into it with our guest, and who better to talk to about this than the former Lithuanian ambassador to NATO, also chief foreign policy advisor at the Lithuanian Geopolitics and Security Studies Center, Vytautas Leškevičius. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador.
Thanks for having me here.
I'm going to start very quickly. You have been making an argument of late, and you're not going to be surprised by this question, to talk about US force posture in Europe, NATO's force model, the kind of planning longer term for the defense of Europe. We've seen stories left and right about troop removals across the European Union from the US, or delayed deployments, as we saw in the case of Poland. We broke the story here on TVP World just last week about the reduction in deep strike capabilities of the US by half on the European continent. You recently wrote a piece saying that the reaction to this reduction in US forces in Europe tends to trigger a European Hunger Games. What did you mean by that?
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking me that. Actually, the core or the gist of the argument that I was trying to make was that one thing for sure that we need to avoid at all costs during these very tense times is further fragmentation within the alliance. And if we start fighting for having more American troops in this or that particular country, instead of keeping Americans engaged in principle in European security, that would be very detrimental, and that was the core argument.
I want to bring you to a concrete example. We've heard just in the last 24 hours from the Polish defense minister, Minister Kosiniak-Kamysz. He said that he had actually conveyed to the US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, that he would like the US to open a permanent base in Poland. The argument, of course, is that that helps strengthen deterrence on NATO's European eastern flank. What do you make of proposals like that for more permanent US bases in Poland?
Absolutely fine, and I would be delighted if Poland succeeded in attracting more American troops, because that would strengthen the defenses, the whole northeastern flank of the alliance. And yet again, I need to dispel one misunderstanding that may be related to the recent article that I wrote. I didn't argue against more American troops in Europe, right? Actually, the opposite is rather right. But I argued against fight for that troops between NATO European allies. And of course, as a Lithuanian and living here in Vilnius, by the way, we are the only NATO ally bordering Russia in the west, not and in the east, well, more or less the same Russia in form of Belarus. Well, of course, I would be very happy seeing more American involvement and more permanent American involvement in or along the whole eastern flank. So I would be very happy for Poland and for Lithuania.
I take your point there that it's not about, campaigning against more US presence in Europe, but rather if that US presence withdraws, that European allies should stay cohesive, should stay united. That brings me to a different question about the structures of security partnerships in Europe. We've seen the Joint Expeditionary Force. We've seen others calling for the strengthening of the pillar of NATO. We've seen the European pillar of NATO. We've seen the European Union toying perhaps with the idea of getting more involved in defense. It has a defense commissioner. Is that not the kind of fragmentation you were thinking about? Would your argument be, let's just keep NATO as it is, focus on NATO, and not have these kind of mini NATOs, NATOs within NATOs, or spin-offs like that? What do you make of those other organizations and structures?
they might be useful in some cases. But yes, you're absolutely right. So I would agree that keeping NATO at the very core in European defenses, that is the most important thing. With more or less or the same amount of Americans being present in NATO. But what matters even more is that we would have at all times assigned forces, American assigned forces for European defenses, and steady American commitment for European defenses. The other format might be, in this or that instance, be helpful as well, but only if they do not contribute to further fragmentation of the alliance.
And we've seen perhaps a tiny bit of tension between the EU and NATO, although broadly speaking, having covered them both here in Brussels, it does seem like there is a decent coordination between both sides. I want to kind of zoom out and bring you back a little bit, back about 12 years, and I think you'll know where I'm going with this. You were at the time the Lithuanian ambassador to NATO, and this summit in Wales back in 2014. Much has been said about President Trump's attitude towards European partners, the pressure that he's been putting on European partners, perhaps the way he is delivering the message is not what some are used to. But you will have been very, very closely acquainted with what was happening in 2014 at the NATO summit in Wales. The message, effectively, the core of the message the United States has been sharing for the last few weeks and months through the Trump administration, was it not already there in 2014? Was it not actually already the case that the US had warned it would do this many, many years ago?
Exactly. That's a point I was trying to make and been making, well, ever since Wales and even before. Historically, actually, Americans have pleaded for more European engagement in the continent defenses, well, ever since the alliance was created. Yes, the rhetorics and the method might have been different. In 2014, that was, well, the landmark summit in pushing that notion that Europeans got to step up for defenses of their own continent. But actually, it is only in 2017 when this message seemed to have come through really within the alliance's corridors.
What changed between 2014 and 2017?
Well, it took some time for Europeans to digest that Americans are getting really serious about it. And now, more or less everyone in Europe seem to have already understood that, well, they've got to come to the fore in European defenses, meaning that they got to invest more, they got to invest into capabilities, and they got to invest right. And in this regard, I found the NATO summit in Warsaw in 2016 very seminal, when the notion of forward presence of NATO in alliances east was first floated and agreed upon.
So let's look forward then to Ankara, to this summit. We've seen reporting just in the last few hours, the US wants concrete plans from European partners to increase aerial capabilities, naval capabilities that they dedicate to the NATO alliance, in line with that reduction in deep strike capabilities the US has promised, and therefore wanting Europe to show, put pen to paper and show the United States what their plans will be. First of all, can European powers really deliver what the US wants to see? And what happens if they don't? What does Ankara look like if Donald Trump is not happy with its European partners?
Well, there's some time till Ankara to polish the messaging, but that's the easy part of it. delivering capabilities at scale, well, it might take a little bit longer than that. But at the end of the day, I hope that we're gonna have a good deal in Ankara with very concrete pledges from Europe on what capabilities, on what critical gaps, and when they are, or we are going to be able to close, letting Americans to take care of, well, some different theaters that they are very much engaged in.
I want to bring you back, Ambassador, to a different question. This is negotiations with Russia. And you, of course, are a very, very seasoned Lithuanian diplomat, so you will have understood a lot of the dynamics at play here. We've seen plans in the last few hours, actually. The French, the Germans, the British are trying to come up with a plan to force Vladimir Putin to the table because they see an opportunity. Ukraine is stronger now than it has been for a while. Is bringing Vladimir Putin to the table to end the war in Ukraine really worth doing? Is this a bit of a fool's errand, or actually could this be a path to peace in Ukraine?
Whatever brings the peace, or at least ceasefire, credible and durable ceasefire, is worth doing. Yet, what matters is if Europeans have sufficient political will and political unity to do so. Say sanctions. We adopting a package of sanctions against Kremlin, against the package, but still, in Russian defense industries, they're still using a plethora, a numbers of Western developed and produced components. So what matters here is the sanction implementations, and this is where Europe again can and need to step up to the plate and to take this issue very seriously. And that might, of course, weaken Kremlin's ability to strike Kiev. I've been there, spent there the whole past week, and I've seen what it means to live through yet another night of heavy bombing. So in some ways, we can diminish Russian capabilities. And if that's the case of what European capitals are trying to do, yes, that's the right path to go.
Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us on TVP World, for sharing your insights. Clear message there of European unity, putting more pressure on Russia to end that war in Ukraine, but also stepping up for Europe's defence against Ambassador Leškevičius. Thank you so much for joining TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you at home for watching. I've been Alex Cadier right here on TVP World in Brussels. Stay tuned for more news and analysis just after this.